All right, welcome to the next episode of Politely Pushy. I am your host, Eric Chummy, and today I am thrilled to introduce Doug Kennedy. He is the founder and CEO of Studio Wildcard. He has done so much in the video game industry, merging the tech world, the media world, Hollywood. He has done so much in those worlds. Doug, you're a fascinating guy. I want to bring you in right now. Tell me, how did you even get involved? How did you even get involved in the video game world? You started in sports.
I did, Eric, and thanks for having me on the show. I've always had a passion for entertainment, and back when I was in college at Arizona State, I got a job working for the Phoenix Suns, and just enjoyed the excitement of live entertainment, of live sporting events, and was able to parlay that into a job with a merchandise division of Sony, and toured the country for a number of years in my mid-20s, kind of a dream job, working with bands like bands like Pearl Jam and Sublime and No Doubt, and ended up working with the Vans Warped Tour back in the mid '90s and got the Warped Tour off the ground. So really just got into my blood that entertainment and live events were something that I wanted to be close to.
It seems like a typical guy that's going to Arizona State looks at you now and thinks this guy's got the best life of all time with all the cool names and brands and things that you've done. It's sports and music and video games. I mean, do you feel like you're the luckiest guy on the planet?
Well, I do feel lucky, and I'll tell you, it's one of those situations where when you look back in retrospect to what I've done, a lot of great stories come out, and I talk a lot about some of the fun things that happened while I was with the Suns or on tour with Pearl Jam. But a lot of work went into it also. There was a lot of responsibility that I took on at a very young age, being on the road, responsible for merchandise at large venues. I mean, sometimes millions of dollars. So while I did have a lot of fun and while I did get a lot of great stories, I did have responsibilities that needed to be handled for the corporations I worked for.
So you've worked with some big names in the video game industry, Xbox, Guitar Hero, Rock Band. What do you think gets certain properties to stand out? Because we know it's a very crowded field.
It is, and there's a variety of different ways to look at video games. They're handheld with Apple and with Android games. There's PC games. There's console games. And I've kind of touched on all of them. There's different challenges when you're a developer or a publisher taking a game to market. Discoverability on the handhelds. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of games heading to Apple and heading to the Android markets. With PC, it's opened up with a couple of really top tier platforms such as Valve's Steam and Epic. The makers of Fortnite have now started launching video game sales on the Epic Game Store. So, there's a lot of situations where you have great games, but they just simply don't get the traction with the customers. So we put a lot of emphasis behind public relations, marketing, but most importantly, working with a lot of streamers with the Twitch platforms and a lot of the streamers that are getting hundreds, if not millions of people that are following their sites, and we get them copies and really work closely with them to start to promote our titles.
It's funny, you just mentioned PR, you mentioned Twitch, you just said promote your titles. Before you had your own Studio Wildcard, which is a development company for video games, you were doing video game PR. So how did you get into the PR side for this promotion? So you were promoting games prior to actually developing games.
Well, it's interesting. I went from the music industry, and I decided at a certain point that, excuse me, I no longer wanted to be on the road. And I was fortunate enough to get a job with NVIDIA, very big company. I think they're about a $600 billion company now. But I was employee 126. I got on board very early and, really enjoyed what I did for NVIDIA. However, I wanted to be more closely working with consumers and also with developers. So I transitioned out of my job with NVIDIA, got a job at Xbox, helped launch the first Xbox, and was on board up at Microsoft at that point. But very quickly realized that the large developers and the large publishers were getting all of the attention from the big platforms, the PlayStations, the Nintendos, the Xboxes. And there were plenty of great games that were coming from small developers that had great ideas. They just couldn't get shelf space at the time. And this was, you have to remember, this was pre-digital download. So the only way to sell a video game at that point was to put it on a disc and sell it. Well, I decided to start a public relations firm and help promote small developers that had games that I thought were worthwhile. Fortunately for me, coming out of the music industry, one of the first games that I worked on, we collectively came up with the idea to build Guitar Hero. So I handled the global sales for Guitar Hero 1 and Guitar Hero 2. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, handled all the public relations. So we leveraged off of each other. She got a lot of great press and a lot of stories. I worked with the retail buyers, and we were able to place Guitar Hero globally, and it became a global phenomenon until we sold it to Activision in 2005.
And so then you started Studio Wildcard. So you were doing the promotion. Now you were helping out these smaller publishers. Then you became a smaller publisher, right? You're not Activision, you're not Take-Two, you're not Electronic Arts. You started Studio Wildcard. Why did you want to become the publisher? Because I look at it, and when I was on Wall Street, we traded in a lot of these names. This is 05, 06, and we realized these were less tech companies and they were more like Hollywood studios, because you had to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to make a title, right? To make a property, and you hoped you'd get a big hit out of it. So the video game business is sort of like the movie business. Why did you want to take that kind of risk?
Well, it's a hits-driven industry without a doubt. And what I learned by working at the agency, and I must say, once we sold Guitar Hero to Activision, I actually got on board and worked with a company called Harmonix that was the developer for not only Guitar Hero, but also developed Rock Band. And I worked for about 10 years with Viacom and with Harmonix, along with a number of small studios. So I really cut my teeth at Reverb Communications by working with a lot of these different smaller studios and learned great lessons. During that time, I had worked with a couple of college students that had built a prototype for me for a project. And they approached me in 2014 and said, hey, we kind of need an adult in the room. Do you want to come run our company for us? So after consulting with my wife and talking—
Wait, you're the adult? They wanted you as the adult?
Yeah, you like that? I was the adult in the room. So I'm definitely the old man at the company. Got on board in 2014. We built a great game, Ark Survival Evolved, and immediately were approached by a number of companies, including Activision, about an acquisition. And we sold the company in 2015, but I still stayed on board as well as all of the employees, and we've been on board for about 7 years now. Great group of guys that purchased us.
That's crazy. So you've worked with so many giants in the industry. Do you have a particular project that stands out as your favorite?
It's kind of like asking me which one of my children are my favorite. It's they're all passions of love. I can give you examples from Guitar Hero and situations that happen there that I tell stories when we get together with friends. There's things with Rock Band that are absolutely amazing, working with the Beatles and the things that transpired when we did Beatles Rock Band. But I'll tell you, with Ark Survival Evolved, I really felt like we took something from the ground floor. I work with two of the greatest game developers that are the smartest guys I've worked with in the industry. I've watched them blossom not only to build a great video game, but also to build a franchise. And currently we're moving from just being a video game company. We're in production right now with a television series, an animated series with great talent: Russell Crowe, Gerard Butler. Vin Diesel is going to be starring not only in the television series, the video game, but also in possibly in 3 movies that we'll be doing that are live action movies.
Wait, so you got some big names here. These are some real A-listers. So how did you get? Let's start. You mentioned Vin Diesel. So you got movies coming out. Like, you talking like in theaters, feature length, like full real deal, big time, normal, movies that we're talking about here, not just some direct to video play.
That's right. So one of the easy parts about working with Vin is, and I can say this with a straight face and almost a little bit embarrassingly, is Vin knows more about Ark Survival Evolved than I do. He logs thousands of hours.
You're the CEO. How is that?
Well, I have a lot of work to do that's away from the game, and Vin plays a lot of Ark Survival Evolved. He is one of the more impressive guys that I've conversed with when it comes to the game. He's knowledgeable. He understands it. And, he'll report bugs and different issues we have with the game back to our development team, which I find refreshing. We've met with Vin several times. He is intimately involved with what we're doing, both from a television standpoint, from a game standpoint for Ark 2. And I can tell you that somewhere down the road, I'm pretty positive that there will be live action Ark movies that will be coming to market.
How does somebody even get Vin Diesel to sign up? Does he reach out to you? Do you reach out to him? Are there agents involved? How does that even happen?
Well, yes, that's a great question. So, ironically, Vin reached out to us a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, and unfortunately, I was leaving the trade show, the Entertainment Electronic Expo (E3), and so
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to meet with him. His agents had reached out to me, so we stayed in touch, and ultimately got everything lined up. I'm going to give a lot of credit to Creative Artist Agency, to CAA. They've been a dream partner for us. Not only a partner, they represent us and have helped us pull together great talents, a great plan for what we're doing with the television series, and they will be at the forefront of what we're doing with movies and any other transmedia properties that we're going to be working with.
So talk about CAA. So they're your agent? Because I think of CAA and I think of,
Right.
okay, they represent athletes, movie stars, TV stars, celebrities. So is it your agent, and is it because they're your agent, they just get a bunch of other CAA clients to sign up? What's going on here?
Well, it didn't happen that way. So they were not my agent at the time that we went out to sign the contracts and look to pull in all the talent. And I will say this, these guys and ladies are very busy with on-set movies and filming. And, unfortunately, the pandemic shut down the live action filming. The upside for that was that we were able to get some of the A-listers who were sitting at home to do the recordings for the television series at their house. So at that point, we approached CAA. We also did a little work with William Morris, but we approached CAA and kind of explained what we were looking to do. A lot of the talent was available, so we were able to sign them and get them on board. Now, once CAA saw the quality of the television series, I mean, the screenwriting, the scripts that were being written, the story that were driven by Jesse Rabchak and Jeremy Steglitz, my two partners, it's something like, I can't even describe how great it is. It excites me every time I watch it. So we were able to pull all that together because people were at home during the pandemic. And once we had the television series to a point where we were able to watch it, we had the voices overlaid, we had the sound put into it, CAA looked at it and offered to represent it to the streaming partners. And so in the next coming weeks, they'll be talking to all the usual suspects that are the big streaming platforms. When
I hear the phrase streaming partners and usual suspects, I'm thinking a Netflix, Hulu, an Amazon Prime, HBO. I mean, is this what we're talking about here, this category of names?
You're talking about that category. And I think one of the interesting aspects is, we started, the foundation of what we do is based on video games. We moved into animated television, and obviously we're talking about live action movies. Netflix has recently announced a move to go not only from streaming movies and television, but also to get into the video game space. So there's an obvious synergy there that we're going to hopefully have conversations about at some point.
So now all of a sudden you're competing with major players in Hollywood, right? You went from being a small video game studio to we're up there doing deals with the Netflixes of the world, right? We've got Vin Diesel now. Like all of a sudden, this is serious. This is big time.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the things that we talk about internally is we use the phrase transmedia on a pretty regular basis.
Transmedia?
Transmedia.
Multimedia.
Multimedia too, but we look at it as being cross-platform media. And if you take a look backwards, for the last 15 or 20 years, you've had a number of successful video game franchises. You've had them try to go to television or try to go to movie, and it really hasn't worked out for them. And then you turn it around and say, well, there's a number of movie franchises that have really done well that want to go to video games, and they've had a hard time. So there's really been this knocking of heads where the television, the movies can't seem to get to video games can't seem to get very successful with TV or movies. And that's our goal. Our goal is to tell a story that starts in a video game, goes onto a television series that's animated, and ultimately continues on to live action movies. But do it in a manner that if you've never played the video game, you can step right into either television or movie and understand what we're trying to do with Ark Survival Evolved.
So it's interesting that you say most of these big brands, they can't get all the parts of the media to work. They can do a game, or they can do the show, or they can do the movie. Maybe they can't get all of them. So what makes you think you're going to be able to do it if all these giant companies can't figure it out?
Well, it's a great question. I think the one thing that we have in our favor is we have a very successful video game property. We've got over 50 million players worldwide. We have a very, let's call it feverish fan base that really knows and communicates with us in terms of what we want. What we've done that's very different from all the other companies is that traditionally in the industry, you have, let's say you have a successful video game. You then have an idea to do television or movie, and you go out and shop the idea to a streaming partner. And that streaming partner says, yes, I'm going to do this, but I want to apply a producer. I want to add a director. I want to tell the story the way that we think we want to tell the story. What we did, which is completely opposite, was we went and funded the entire project ourselves. We decided to put the money in ourselves, myself and my two partners, pay for the entire animated television series, and tell the story that we know our fans want. And so we've really cut out the ability for the streaming partners to come in and take over the story. So we know that the story is going to be something beloved by our fans, and we just hope we find a partner that actually wants to stream it in the manner that we want to tell the story. So a little bit different, but unique.
Right. So it goes to that phrase that you always hear: creative differences on the project.
I can tell you that I've heard a few horror stories, and those horror stories were kind of the foundation of us deciding on our own that we want to tell this story in this manner, in this way, through animation with these voiceover actors, which we were fortunate enough to get. And we're going to finish the project, and then we will have it in front of the partners, and we'll see if somebody wants to step up and purchase it.
So you're basically just fully producing it yourself. It's our story. We're funding it. It's the way we want it. It's our talent, our narrative, our storyline. It's done. And just tell us if you want to put this on your platform or not, but you don't get to edit anything.
Well, I think there's going to be the ability to make minor changes, but from a storyline standpoint, I think we're going to be pretty much locked and in the can at that point. We're not at a point where we basically just hand over the tape, but we will work with them a little bit. But in essence, the reality of what we're doing and the reality of what our fan base wants will be clearly communicated when you watch the ARC television series.
And you think the mistake that a lot of these companies make is they hand over too much control too early on, that they just let these streaming platforms say, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to have the producers do X, Y, and Z. And then the storyline doesn't look anything like your fans would have wanted it to look like.
Well, I haven't been in those rooms to hear those conversations, but what I can tell you is that, this is a passion project for us. No matter how many fans we get or how much money the franchise makes, we make decisions solely based on what's right for the franchise and what's right for the audience. And working with a partner that is not part of our internal circle that really understands how we communicate with our fans based on even expansion packs that we build for the game, or how we're going to be telling a story about a certain character inside the television series. That's something that only we can do. And it was just the way that we wanted to handle it. And I think it's going to show success when we launch it.
And then you mentioned earlier, Vin Diesel was a big fan of the game. He plays it a lot. He reached out to you guys first, and then the relationship built from there. But then you mentioned Russell Crowe, Gerard Butler, all these big names that are associated with the animated series. Are they also gamers here? Are they playing it? Or is this just more of a, we're building a show here and we need to find top talent, and we work through the agencies to find these talent? How did you get all of those guys? You said people were sitting at home from the pandemic, but even then, if they got plenty of money, they don't have to work, but they chose to do this project. What was the reason why?
Well, I think, once again, going back to the storyline and the scripts that were written, I think it's a terrific story. And that's something that really excited everybody that read through that. When you get to an actor like Vin, first and foremost, I think the thing that people don't understand about Vin Diesel is he's probably one of the nicest guys in or outside of Hollywood. I have so much respect for him in terms of just the way he approaches projects, and he approached us. We sat down with him at length. We have a lot of correspondence with him back and forth in terms of how we're doing things. He gives unbelievable feedback. This isn't a situation where we just write Vin a check and he throws his voice at us and says, yeah, go ahead and use our likeness. He's intimately involved in the project and really gives us great feedback. So that's something that we wanted to, let come across, not only with him being in the video game, but also him being in the television series, and also the potential for him to be in the movies that we're looking to do. When it comes to other actors like Gerard Butler and Russell Crowe, I don't think that they play a lot of video games, but I think that they're very, very well versed in reading scripts and understanding storylines. I can tell you that on the calls with Russell, he was very big on this is how I want to do this. This is how I think this character should be. And we were very receptive. I mean, when you have somebody of Russell Crowe's stature making recommendations about changes to, hey, let's change the script like this. I'd like to do the voice like this. You listen and you take those recommendations and you get chills because he's investing into the project. And Gerard Butler, same thing. He was, once again, just an absolute gentleman, knew what he was doing, came in, added extra time. He wanted the project to be successful, and it wouldn't surprise me if all of these guys weren't lined up when we get ready to do the movie.
That's pretty impressive. You mentioned the rabid fan base. You mentioned you get a lot of communication with the fan base. When I was prepping for this interview, you type in ARC, you type in Studio Wildcard, and you see a lot of comments from fans. They are ripping you and the company, and the company's mismanaging the game and the updates and this and that. And I'm sure you're aware of it. If I could find it in 2 seconds, you clearly are living it. What is that like when fans, because we have 50 million of them, even if you said you had a 99% satisfaction rate, 1% of 50 million is 500,000 angry people. So how do you deal with that while trying to manage his business?
It's kind of like, it's like the way the internet operates. If I put an apple on the table and ask somebody what color it is, I'll get 30 different answers. I think that we try to do our best to, appease the large masses. There are always going to be people that are upset about things, and I'll tell you, to be honest with you, I get emails from fans. I respond to every one of them. If there's a critical issue with the game that they're finding, or if they've been suspended for some type of inappropriate behavior, I get on it. I pass it along and I make my recommendations. I don't take it personally by any stretch of the imagination. And it's just part of the nature of being there. If you look at a major league or baseball player and athlete, you're going to have a hometown athlete that everybody loves, but the minute he steps out of his hometown, everybody's booing him and screaming at him. So, it's just like I said, it's the nature of what we do. I try to avoid looking at that stuff, and I try to tell my kids not to read it, but they giggle and read some of it and find it funny.
You mentioned your kids. How much time are you letting them spend on the screens, on the video games? Because you always see the stories you always hear those stories like, oh, well, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, they never let their kids get in front of the computer because it's too dangerous. So how do you feel about all that?
I think that's a great question. And I'm going to answer it like this, and I'm going to broaden it more than just my children. It's with anything, there's moderation. And if you sit all day and play video games, you're going to have issues. There's going to be social issues that arise. There's going to be issues of self-confidence because of the things we just talked about with people ripping on each other and messages back and forth. What my wife and I try to do is, we manage it on a very strange front. We monitor the grades that our kids have and make sure that they're still managing great grades. They're very big on being outside. We go to the beach quite a bit. They play baseball. But, when it hits summertime, and they don't have schoolwork and they've finished what they need to do for the summer, we give them a little more freedom to play. But we also talk to them about the things that happen online. And there are toxic environments on the internet, and both in Xbox Live and also in PlayStation Network. So we just have the conversations, and we think our kids are mature enough to kind of make those decisions on their own.
So mentioning kids, your own kids, but I know you're also doing a lot of mentoring, high school age, college age kids. How did you start that program? And it seems like you're basing it out of New Jersey. And why is that?
Well, I grew up in New Jersey, and I went to high school in Glen Rock, New Jersey, and ultimately moved out to Arizona to go to Arizona State and then on to California. I just have an affinity and a love for New Jersey. I've gone back to Montclair State a few times and given speeches back there, and talked to kids about the video game industry. I've gone to Stevens Institute of Technology a couple of times and talked to different classes. One of the things that I look at from a video game standpoint is we don't do a very good job of onboarding younger kids into the industry. It's a difficult place to get a job because a lot of kids think, well, I'm going to be a video game tester. And it's not a great job, but it is a job to get into the industry. Then they want to be a programmer. And the problem in what I've seen at the schools is many of the schools are teaching the wrong languages and telling the kids to get on board with a language that may not get them into a top tier job in the industry.
What's an example? What's the language that they're teaching? What's the language you want to see them teaching?
Well, and I don't want to sound like I'm dismissing one of the languages, but Unity is a widely used and a widespread language for kids to develop can you develop PC and console games on Unity? Yes, but it's not really a widely used language. Unreal Engine, which is the engine that's licensed by Epic Games, the makers of Fortnite, is really the Ferrari or the Lamborghini of the industry. And just in one of my recent mentoring situations, I have a kid that's a senior in high school. He has to take a mentorship class. He could not find one in New Jersey. One of the teachers reached out to me, and I agreed to take him on for a 9-month program. So I meet with him weekly. We talk about Unreal Engine, and he's actually programming a game. I had him talk with some of the developers that I work with in the industry, some in Canada, some here in the US, and they told him point blank, if you learn this language, I will hire you before you even go to college. And so it's that type of stuff that I'm really pushing the kids to understand. And I'm trying to give them a taste that, here's what happens with programming, here's graphic design, here's networking, here's all the things that happen in gaming, and you can make the choice of what you'd like to do and which college you'd like to go to.
So what's the best piece of advice for a younger person? Let's say they're watching this, listening to this, and there's just like one takeaway. What would that one takeaway be for them?
Well, I think the one takeaway is that, the video game industry offers a lot of success, but you also have to be prepared that there are a lot of failures in the industry. There's a lot of great games that have been launched that never saw the light of day for a variety of different reasons. And, when you come into the industry, you need to be prepared that you're going to get knocked down. You're going to work crazy hours. You're going to feel like you're overworked, you're underpaid, you're going to feel like you're going to get knocked down quite a bit. And it's not, you got to remember that it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. And there will come a time after you put your dues in and put your first, your second, maybe your third or fourth year in, that all of a sudden things will start to click and you're going to start to realize what a spectacular industry it is and how you can allow your creative juices to really take over and do the things that you were really dreaming about doing in high school.
I like that. I like that. So going back to the work you did on the PR side, and then you went on to the studio development side, where do you see is the disconnect between these content developers, but actually the storytelling to reach the masses, whether that's getting their product out or being able to expand into TV and movie or merchandise? I'm sure you see these competitors and you look at them and think, man, they're really kind of messing up their opportunity because of the PR side.
Oh, I see that all the time. It's funny.
Tell me.
I think that, having run the public relations firm for actually 12 years, we focused on 3 things. We focused on public relations, sales, and we focused on marketing. And what we tried to explain to game developers was, you need to focus on building a really good game, and we'll focus on making sure people know about it. And fortunately for us, right in the middle of us owning this agency, there was a transition that went from retail onto digital. And that was really precipitated by Apple allowing digital download. So a lot of developers ran to the App Store, but there were a lot that stayed on the PC download site, and then ultimately with console games allowing you to download. And so developers kind of undertook the attitude, I don't need a publisher anymore, which they, more or less were right with that. However, what they needed was someone to go and manage the first parties, being Sony, Microsoft, and Valve, and Steam, to make sure that they were getting promoted, make sure that there were articles about their game. Their games were being submitted to be scored by various sites like IGN or Game Industry Biz or companies like that would be able to do stories and articles. And many of these developers didn't have that internal resource, so they leaned on an agency. So we ended up working on some pretty spectacular games. I'll give my wife some big credit here. She ran Reverb Communications after I left to go work at Studio Wildcard, and she ended up launching a game called PlayerUnknown Battleground, otherwise known as PUBG. And then she also launched a game called Rocket League, both billion-dollar properties that really took off from zero revenue onto over billions and billions of dollars in revenue.
Because of the PR side.
Well, I think because the games are really good games, but I look at it from this standpoint. You can have a great game and nobody would hear about it. You just put it out there and it doesn't get any traction. And I look at it like this. In order to launch a game and be successful, there are 4 things that you need. You need to have a really good game. You need to have distribution to the right type of platforms where people can find it. You need to have marketing, and you need to have public relations. And the one thing is, I can guarantee you that if you have all 4 of those, you're probably going to have a pretty good chance of being successful. But if you're missing one of those, I can pretty much guarantee you that your game is probably not going to succeed.
Right. So you don't believe in word of mouth, or if you build it better, they'll come find you. Like that kind of stuff's not good enough, because my guess is it's too crowded and people's attention spans are too short to just naturally find something good.
Well, things like that do happen, and I don't want to discount the power of the internet, but I think that, we would much rather put all of our eggs into a basket that's worked than hope that somebody's going to discover the game and hope that somebody's going to stream about it on a streaming platform. And put the vehicles out there that have worked previously, the relationships with the streamers, getting the games out there to the people that will talk to the masses, rather than just sitting back and hoping that something is going to take place.
You mentioned the streamers, the relationships. Twitch is such a huge platform right now. Are you guys fully in on that? Is that your primary place of getting social influence, or is that that was a couple of years ago? Like, where are you guys actually seeing the leading edge for getting the word out?
No, that is without a doubt one of the primary places. And I think that, when I lean on my public relations team at Studio Wildcard, I challenge them with every release, whether it's an expansion pack, an announcement about a movie coming up, or a television series, or even an announcement about Arc 2. There are foundational pieces that we use to announce upcoming products that we will always use. We'll always do a press release. We'll always notify our community. We'll always do things of that nature. But what I challenge the team with is, what are some of the new vehicles that are out there that are unique and different that will actually gain attention? Because there's definitely fatigue in the industry, not only from the people that work in the industry in terms of the number of press releases, the number of announcements, what's happening. So, you really do want to lean on your community to kind of let them know that things are coming, but you also have to widen the community and open the net up to make it a little bit bigger if you want to grow your community. So that challenge is always going on. There are people at our agency that are constantly researching what are the hot new places that games are being talked about, and how do we integrate ourselves without looking like we're just coming in to, buy our way into a situation.
Do you think it's harder to launch a new game, or to actually do the animated series or the movies that you guys are working on?
Wow. I'll get back to you on that. We're midstream on the television series. It's been just a absolute passion of love. Like I said, my two partners, I glow over working with these guys. I am absolutely just, enamored by their ability to tell a story and to be involved with every creative aspect of the hand-drawn animation that's being done. I think that we're going to learn a little bit more in the coming weeks as we start to get much deeper with, the Netflix and the Hulus and the HBO Maxes, and understand what they're looking for. But I think if anything is an indication, it's the quality of the television series, it's the quality of the talent that we have, and the ability to let these streaming partners know that if you get involved with us at a television stage, there are enormous opportunities with movies moving forward, live action movies that can do hundreds of millions of dollars.
And then lastly, what's next for you? It seems like you don't stay too long at any one place, and you're starting to be, all right, you've been around Studio Wildcard for a long enough time now. Is there a bigger, better goal, a job that you're looking at that you want to get to one day?
No, I'll actually retire at Studio Wildcard at some point. But I will say this: I'm enormously proud of being brought along for the ride with Jeremy Steglitz and Jesse Rabchak. I think that they, once again, just tremendous guys. They don't get the credit that they deserve in the industry. They're probably some of the best developers, storytellers, great guys. We're looking at some other things, such as, maybe getting into blockchain, NFTs, cryptocurrency, game aspects of things that we might be doing with future projects that we're working on. I'm not saying that we're committed to that, but we're looking at a wide range of things that'll just drive our franchise and build it and make it much bigger and better.
I was about to let you go, but you mentioned blockchain and crypto and NFTs. So now it's like, hold on, wait a minute. Before we go, what are you talking about? What does that have to do with video games?
Well, I think that's what you guys should keep an eye on this for. We're an unbelievably unique plan that if we pull the trigger on, it will be enormous. And it will fall right into what I said: blockchain, NFT, and cryptocurrency at some point at a later date.
Okay. Okay. I like it, Doug. I appreciate it.
I'll tease you with that, Eric. It's something that we're really, I'm looking at both with Studio Wildcard and also with another studio that I'm working with on the side.
So let's put it this way. When are we going to have you back on to talk about that? How many months are we waiting for to hear more about this?
Well, I think, I would give it about 6 months and we're off and running at that point. So, yeah, we're very excited about really being at the forefront of what's going on, not only in gaming, but in technology.
Awesome, Doug. I really appreciate this. This is super fascinating. You've done a lot. Not a lot of people can say they were one of the early employees at NVIDIA. We've seen what that company's done. That stock's gone crazy. Worked in the video game industry, worked in the sports industry, hanging out with Vin Diesel, right? You've got a pretty crazy life, So it's been a pleasure. I appreciate the time. Looking forward to see what you're going to be able to turn these projects into. I think you're right. This next 6 to 12 months, we're going to have to keep a real close eye on what Studio Wildcard's up to.
Well, I appreciate that. And I really do appreciate you having me on. It's been a joy.
All right. Thanks a lot, Doug. We'll see you later.